The termination of the war and the immediate concerns over the position of the Soviet Union in the international arena altered the domestic environment in the U.S. A chain of events signaled the onset of the Cold War and the dual policies of containment at home and containment abroad. The National Security Act, passed in 1947, initiated the process of administrative and military reorganization with the creation of the Department of Defense, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Council and Agency. Intelligence gathering abroad and investigations of alleged communist activities at home heightened American concern over the deteriorating situation in Europe. Within a brief period of time, the political and geographic boundaries of Central Europe had been reconstituted, establishing Soviet-dominated governments in virtually all of the Eastern European nations. American foreign policy could by then be described in terms of the Truman Doctrine, which, put specifically, was a policy that had as its key objective the absolute containment of communism to its existing borders. In practice, this policy was being implemented primarily through massive military and economic assistance to Europe. The year of 1947 was also notable for two extraordinary events. In the spring, Jackie Robinson became the first African American to play Major League Baseball, becoming an inspiration to many and opening the door for future black players to join him. In the fall, test pilot Chuck Yeager flew his experimental plane, the X-1, faster than the speed of sound and opened the door for the future space age. In 1948, Harry Truman was elected president in his own right by beating Republican Thomas Dewey in one of the greatest political comebacks in American history. In February of 1950, Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin entered the political arena in an ambitious and forthright way. McCarthy became publicly recognized when he stepped into the spotlight carrying a list of 205 names which he claimed were made known to the Secretary of State as being members of the Communist Party and who were working and shaping American foreign policy. McCarthy made headlines throughout the country and would remain on the front page for more than 4 years. Even without significant evidence, McCarthy's reign was a reign of terror and intimidation. Hundreds of people in and out of government were accused of being communists or communist sympathizers. Many were blacklisted from working in their respective fields. On June 25, 1950, Soviet-supported North Korea invaded U.S.-supported South Korea. The newly formed United Nations called on its member states to support the South. President Truman then authorized General Douglas MacArthur to lead American ground forces into Korea. The conflict, dubbed a police action, lasted for 3 years. By 1951, the Communist Chinese had entered the war on the side of the North. In April of that year, Truman relieved MacArthur from command for criticizing the president's authority. By the time a ceasefire agreement was reached in 1953, little territory had changed hands, and the first war of containment during the Cold War era accomplished almost nothing. In November of 1952, General Dwight D. Eisenhower became our nation's 34th president. Once Eisenhower had taken office, Senator McCarthy turned his attentions to the United States Army. Investigations made into Army bases proved to be fruitless, and no evidence of subversion or security risk turned up. The antagonism of the President and the Congress mounted. Shortly thereafter, the Senate ordered an investigation of McCarthy, and the press began to shift its attention away from McCarthy's allegations and towards his demise. The Army-McCarthy hearings were televised in a manner which made it clear that the pursuit of the communist heresy in the United States had become the pursuit against the basic principles of American democracy. The ensuing censure of Senator McCarthy terminated a major chapter in American history. Other notable events from the 1950s include the re-election of President Eisenhower, the birth of rock and roll, the polio vaccine, Alaska and Hawaii becoming the 49th and 50th states, and the birth of the modern civil rights movement in the United States.